Thank you to everyone who's joining us today. I think I would turn off the light if it's fine, just because I have a lot of pictures and they might be clearer without the light on. So I guess today we'll be carrying on with a series that was started a few weeks ago. So far we have learned the horticulture aspects related to tree fruit production. We also looked at the soil health aspects, and today we're going to look at diseases. And the next slide, please. Sorry. I would like to start with the icebreaker just because it's plant diseases. And so this slide here is asking what plant disease you are based on what you'd like to do. So I can't really see everyone who's online right now, but for those in the audience, which plant disease are you? So what would you rather be doing? For each of you, would you rather be hiking in the woods? Would you rather be swimming in the tropics? Would you rather be eating at a restaurant, at home on the farm, traveling around the world? I will give you 2 minutes to pick on your category. Example, if you like to swim in the tropics, your favorite activity, it breaks it down further. I'd like each of you to go up to the bottom. It's hard to see the numbers. Are they visible on the computer, Gabe? Okay, so in the audience, we'll give you 2 minutes, and once you get to that point, just tell us, and Gabe will assign a number, and then we'll figure out what plant disease you are. So 2 minutes, starting from what you'd rather do of each of these 5 categories at the top. Do you like to hike in the woods? If so, what's your favorite activity? Flying a kite or walking in the rain? And then depending on which you choose, when it comes to food, what do you, I think I need to look at the slide. So we have four in our audience, so we'll use you for icebreaker. I will give you each 2 minutes to pick on which category there, and then just keep note of the number. Just remember what number is you end up with at the bottom, depending on what you like to do. And if you'd like us to move it, just let us know. There's different categories. Okay. At home on the farm, your favorite scent is fresh air or the scent of rain. And then again, when it comes to food, either you are picky or not picky are the two main ones. So depending on whether you're picky will be the green, anything on the left for each, and then not picky would be the blue. And I'm just going to tell you a number, which I'd like you to remember. Everyone have a number?
Swimming in the tropics.
Okay.
I'm swimming in the tropics.
Swimming in the tropics?
Number
Okay.
7.
Oh, number 7?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Home on the farm, traveling around.
Under here where it says when it comes to food, and then there's green, it says I'm
kind of picky. I'm not picky.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right. So the green is picky and the blue is not picky. On number 14, okay. So we have 7, 14,
I'm 18.
18,
17.
17. So we all have a number, thank you. And so the next slide is going to tell you what disease you are based on your number. So was anyone number 1? No, number 1. I think the first I recall was 7, Dr.
7, yes.
Busterville. So I see nematode. And nematodes are one of the pathogens that will cause plant diseases on tree fruits as well. And so I'm a tiny parasitic worm. I tend to feed on and infect the roots of specific plants such as soybean and potato. And so that's what it tends to do. And if we had stickers, I'd give you the sticker to keep. I didn't get to print stickers, sorry. What number were you, Abina?
17.
17. 17 stem rust. So a rust is caused by fungi, and a fungal disease of wheat and barley. Throughout history, I have been a threat to the world supply of wheat. My wind-borne spores like to travel the world. So just a little fact about rusts. And it's, I think 12, okay, sorry. 12 is a crown gull. So the gulls are caused by a bacteria, and this can be found in the soil and infect roots of grapes, many fruits, and nut trees. So it's a very common pathogen and disease of even tree fruits, which we're going to be looking at today, and dozens of other plant species. So it has a very wide host range. It is not picky compared to certain pathogens. Thank you. Dr. I think we,
Just pick it up.
Well, I raised tomatoes, so, and I see you
Tomatoes.
got it.
Right.
Tomato with fusarium wilt, but I'm not sure that's
Oh.
the same thing I'm looking at.
Right. So there's a tomato. Well, so number 16 is a viral disease, and there's a 19. So this one is caused by fusarium, which are a very important fungal group because they will cause wilts in tomatoes, potatoes. I mean, they have a very wide host range as well. And fusariums are a team player, so they will cause diseases in combination with other pathogens. Yeah, found in soil. So that one is a soil-borne pathogen. Thank you.
14.
14. Aster yellows, very unique. So there are not many phytoplasma diseases. Aster yellows are caused by phytoplasma, very small microorganisms associated with hundreds of species, many in the aster family, but can also infect crops like such as wheat and barley, and not picky as well. Thank you. Gabe, 18. Laurel wilt is also a fungal disease of the laurel family, and it will have hosts such as the red bay, sassafras, and avocados may be my most well-known hosts. So you see the diversity, a lot of them fungal diseases, but I guess I did this exercise just to show that plant diseases can be caused by different pathogens. We have seen an example of a bacterial disease, a fungal disease, we had a nematode disease, and we didn't have any viral diseases. And so when we go into today's presentation, next slide, please, where we're going to look at tree fruits, we're going to discuss these concepts and see how that relates to managing. And so I'm going to use the slide which was used during the introduction as a way of introducing tree fruits. Missouri is home to many tree fruits, such as apples and pears, and also several what are known as stone fruits because of that stone that they have in the center, such as peaches, nectarines, apricots, plums, and cherries. And some of these will do better than others because some of these might be more prone to the spring frost, or maybe more susceptible to the conditions or diseases that you might find occurring here. These, however, are what you might commonly see with regard to tree fruit in Missouri. Next slide, please. And so we're interested in diseases, which is what I will be talking about today, because diseases cause losses with regards to the yield, reduced yields, and they will also result in tree decline over time. They will also reduce your marketability of your fruits as well as the quality if it is a post-harvest disease. And I have here several examples of diseases that can infect tree fruits. And these diseases are more important as well because they will affect any part of the plant. So some of the diseases will affect the flowers, some will affect the leaves, some the branches, some the shoots, some the fruit. And so then they have the potential to cause significant losses for the growers or the farmers. And that is why we want to study these diseases and see how we could control them. We're going to look at several examples. That's just a table to give an overview or demonstrate why we are interested in diseases. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I will start by defining a disease. We're talking about diseases, but what is a disease? So we're probably all familiar with, we've all gotten sick at some point, at least in our lives, and so plants will get sick as well. And the disease is just defined as the abnormal functioning of a organism, in this case, a plant. And so it means that the plant is not looking or behaving as normal as it should. So plant diseases have three characteristics we use to describe them. Firstly, we say that plant diseases cause harm, injurious, meaning they will cause harm to the plant. And also we say that plant diseases are progressive, meaning that they will develop over time. So for example, today you sow one plant that was diseased, tomorrow you might find a second, and the next day you might find a third. So it spreads. If you have one plant that has symptoms of disease, and it just happens to be that one over a long period, it might be something else. Those are some of the things we will use to determine whether it's a disease or something else, such as, herbicide injury or chemical injury or abiotic factors or nutrient deficiency. There's so many other things that could cause symptoms caused by diseases. And also plant diseases are transmissible, meaning that it will be transmitted from one plant to one fruit to one tree to another. It won't just stay, which is why they will be progressive as well. And that's just a picture showing a common disease of tree fruit that is a brown rot. And brown rot is a very important disease of stone fruit. There is some fruit that are just rotten with the mold, and there are some healthy ones. So try to picture fruit like that in your orchard close to the healthy ones. Will likely have those ones developing rot as well, because disease is progressive and transmissible, right? Thank you. Next slide, please. And so when we are talking about plant diseases, we want to try and understand the disease triangle because it's a very, very important concept. It tells us how the disease comes about. And also if you do end up getting disease, it's always good to think back to the disease triangle, because then we can look at what we can do at for each of these variables to manage the disease. So in order for disease to develop or to occur, we need a pathogen, which could be the fungi, the bacteria, the nematode, the virus, the phytoplasma. And we use a term, the pathogen has to be virulent, meaning it should be able to cause disease. We also need an environment that's favorable, maybe the wet, the humid weather, those are very common environmental conditions which will favor disease. And we need the host. Since today we're talking about tree fruit diseases, our host would be the tree, but it could be your crop, it could be the grass, it could be any plant that the pathogen is going to affect. And so these three interact to cause disease. Thank you. And then another important concept is the disease cycle. So we have those three factors. We have the pathogen, the host, the environment, but then we now want to look at how the disease is going to develop from the time that the spore or the pathogen is introduced to the host. And so we use this terminology called the disease cycle. And the disease cycle is basically telling us all the events that will occur from the time the pathogen gets in contact with the host to cause infection, to colonize, and it begins to reproduce so that it has more infection propagates and then gets dispersed. And there are many ways that pathogens will get dispersed to cause new infection, by wind, by water, by seed. And humans are actually a big vector, because we go into fields and we might carry nematodes on our boots if we don't remember to wash them. We have planting equipment that we use in one site and go use it in another site. So we're lifting anything that was in a site that might have had pathogens. And also insects are a big vector for virus diseases, because they will carry viruses, feed on one plant, aphids as an example, feed on an infected plant and then feed on a healthy plant. And that's a way of transmitting the disease. Thank you. Next slide. So I have here a slide to show examples of pathogens that could cause plant diseases. And I'm showing this because I like to visualize a plant cell. So that's just a visual of the plant cell. And I have here the different possible pathogens that could cause diseases on tree fruit and any other plants. Fungi, as you will see, cause the majority of plant diseases, which is why they're so important. 80% of known plant diseases are caused by fungi. And you might wonder why. One of the reasons we think that is so is because it's very easy for these guys to spread. They could spread by wind, they could spread through the water, through vectors. They just seem to have many means of being spread compared to some, such as the bacteria, nematodes, and viruses. Viruses are only limited to vectors because they cannot move by themselves, so they will rely on another host. The bacteria usually spread by splash and rain, water. The nematodes are soil-borne, so anything that moves the soil will move the nematodes. But the fungi could be moved by any of these means, and so they will cause the majority of diseases. And with regards to the size, the nematodes are the largest. These you might be able to see. They're all microscopic, but you will be able to see these at the lowest magnification. That's a stylet of the nematode that it uses to infect the plants. And here's a fungal mycelia, and the hyphae, that is just a structure of fungi. And then we have the bacterium, which is really tiny and is inside the cell. And the viruses, the virus, which are the virus particles, are even smaller, and they're inside the cell as well. So that's just to help visualize the size of these different pathogens in relation to the plant cell. Next slide, please. So when we talk about diseases, we would like to know how they are spread. So we know what a disease is, we know what is required for disease to occur, and we know what pathogens could cause disease. How then are these pathogens and or the diseases spread? And I have mentioned in previous slide, soil is one. And for any soil-borne pathogen, anything that's going to move your soil from one location to another is likely moving your pathogens as well. And then seed or planting stock, which is why it is recommended to use clean planting material or tested seed. And then the wind as well, anything that will, that's very a big dissemination method for the fungi, because fungi spread by spores. They produce spores, and so when we have the wind blowing these spores, we've heard of diseases that were introduced from far countries into another by means of dust. Like Sahara dust, I know, was one way rats got introduced here. So wind is a big variable, and then vectors as well. Insects will carry a lot of viruses, and they might also carry other pathogens, primarily viral diseases though. Next slide, please. And so we're going to go into tree fruit diseases, and you might wonder what type of tree fruit diseases exist, and this will apply to any other plant, not just tree fruits. So we have two categories of diseases. We classify diseases as either pre-harvest, meaning that would be a disease occurring before harvest in the field during production. And it could start from nursery, diseases like damping off, seedling diseases, or diseases affecting your plant, and even the fruit prior to harvest. And that's an example of the apple disease. The apple is still on the tree, it's not harvested yet, but it clearly has disease because, well, we have different symptoms. We have some spots, and we have these lesions, and we have another example here, an apple as well. That one is harvested, and so diseases like that will be classified as post-harvest diseases, and these are equally important because these are occurring after you've harvested your fruit, and these could occur in storage. For a lot of the tree fruit, I know that they will be stored for several months to supply the market at different times. And so if you have a disease occurring in storage, during shipping, in the market, I've been to stores and you see some fruit rotting, all those would be post-harvest diseases. And for some of these, the infection might be occurring after harvest, whereas for certain post-harvest diseases, the pathogen might have entered the crop before harvest, and then the conditions become favorable after harvest, and then it begins to develop symptoms. So it's good to know that we have pre-harvest diseases and post-harvest diseases, and both are very important for tree fruit production. Thank you. Next slide. And so just a few examples of diseases here. I have a list. I will ask you to go yeah, so there's apple scab. Apple scab is caused by fungus Venturi inequalis, and this is one important one. And you will get your apple fruit looking like that. So you have these scabby lesions. I don't think this apple will be accepted on market. So we see that the disease is affecting the marketable quality, the fruit quality, and so that's a loss for the grower. And then we have a second, powdery mildew. So powdery mildews are also common in vegetable production, and you will see signs, spores of the pathogen on leaves, on the upper side of leaves, but it also causes this interesting looking appearance on apples. So it affects both the leaves, but it will also affect your fruit, and therefore has the potential to cause significant losses if not managed. We also have another example of a disease, cedar apple rust, common here. So the rusts are common, but these require alternate host to complete their life cycle. So they're complex pathogen, different from moss. They have 5 spore stages, and so what we're seeing here are actually rust spores. And so if you had windy conditions or anything that could blow those, you're going to get infection, right, of any healthy plants or trees nearby. But it's called cedar apple rust because the cedar plant is the alternate host. And so with regards to management for such a disease, you try to get rid of the alternate host if you have it around, because then that means that the pathogen would not be able to complete its life cycle. If you have the alternate host and your apple tree, then the pathogen will, complete its life cycle and you have more of it. So for such diseases, we'll say start by getting rid of the alternate host. So then you know that the pathogen has no way of surviving. And when we think of the disease cycle, fire blight is a very important one because it just causes dieback. The tree just dies off, as you will see. It almost looks like the tree was burnt with fire, and hence the name fire blight, caused by a bacteria, Awinia amylovora, and that's a very important one too. And we have a white rot. And these are 2 pictures to show that will affect the stem, the branches, and the fruit as well. So pre-harvest, but even post-harvest symptoms. And then sooty blotch just causes this black appearance on your apple. So it's only affecting the skin of the apple, and it could be wiped off because it's kind of like, I think in certain vegetables, sooty mold, they will get this black appearance, which could be wiped off. For plants, you don't want that because it's interfering with the photosynthesis, because then it's covering the chlorophyll, which is needed for photosynthesis and the yields. In this case, the fruit doesn't look good for marketing, but it can be wiped off.
That is very common.
It's very common.
I had 2 apple plates. I had that problem.
Oh, really? Interesting. Right.
Saying,
Right.
it's easy because
Yes.
I close the highway.
Wow.
It's strong.
Yes, yes, both are fungal diseases for sure, fungal pathogens, yes. So they're not economically important like apple scab or fire blight or the mildews, but I mean, they still affect the appearance of the apples. You don't want your apples looking like that. Thank you. Next slide, please. And then we have several diseases which could affect the stone fruit, and I grouped these together because the stone fruit will be affected by a similar group of pathogens. So again, the peaches, nectarines, apricots, plums, and cherries. And one of the most important is brown rot caused by a fungus, Monolinia fruticola. And this is what it will cause your fruit to look like. So these are fruit that have rotted, and they have even developed mold, gray or brown mold. The fruit turns brown. And so this would be a very big inoculum source in the orchard. If you had a tree and you had fruit looking like that, you would want to take that out right away because all those spores could infect healthy fruit and that are close by. And so removal of inoculum is another recommended management, which we're going to talk about sanitation, keeping your orchard clean. If you notice anything that looks diseased or you see signs of disease like that's clearly evident, you want to get it and out of your orchard as far as you could possibly, because those fungal spores could cause a reinfection of nearby plants or trees. And then pitch leaf curl is another example caused by another fungus, Staphyna deformans, and it causes this galling and curling of peach trees and the stone fruit as well. So that one is affecting mostly the leaves, but it probably will interfere with the photosynthetic efficiency because the leaves are what are involved in photosynthesis, and you might have reduced yields. We also have bacterial spots. So caused by bacteria Xanthomonas, there is a fruit with so many spots, you cannot sell that. And that would, I guess, affect your fruit quality as well as your ability to sell because you have all these scabs and there's not really much you can do about those. And then, oh yes, just to kind of show there's a right to kind of show, I guess, how big the scabs are in relation to the quarter,
Oh,
right?
it's
Mhm.
kind of big.
Or it's a dime. Yeah, I think it's a dime.
It's a
Anyway.
Okay, yeah, then I guess I need to check. I didn't look close. Thank you. And then we have cankers. That's bacteria. So another bacterial. So one common symptom or sign of bacteria is they cause this ooze, and I think we saw it with a fire blight. For any bacterial disease, one way when you take for diagnosis, what some people would do is just cut the stem in half and put the stem in water, clear water, and you could literally see the bacterial cells oozing out. And so
That
Mhm.
one is very common on peach trees.
cankers, yeah,
I have peach trees,
Mhm.
they grow that,
Mhm.
when it's kind of
right,
frustration, when you don't know how to treat
yes,
that problem.
right.
How do you say you will manage that?
So for bacterial diseases, I know that fire blight is another example. Usually they will recommend antibiotics for bacterial diseases. Those are more effective, and then copper sprays as well. Bactericides, I'm not sure how those effective will be for some of these diseases because the canker and fire blight are just really, really severe. I know antibiotics and copper sprays might do better, but then you might also want to, so for diseases, when it gets to an extent like that, the best option will sometimes just be getting rid of that tree because it's harder to control diseases when they're advanced, which is why we recommend to do as much to prevent them from happening. So when we go to the management options in coming slides, we'll focus a lot on preventative strategies, things you can do to make sure, or at least to minimize the risk of disease occurrence. Because once it comes, there are not many options. Even with chemicals, if you do apply chemicals, for example, there are chemicals you can apply to protect your plant because they will prevent infection from happening. But when disease happens, there are not many chemicals that will kill the fungus which is already established. And they say when the symptoms are already visible, it means there are already so many pathogens in the system that it might be hard to eradicate completely. Yes.
How do you give a tree an antibiotic? Do you give it a shot?
Right. So
Pill?
I right. So yes, I know that so Florida, I know in some states where fire blight was a really big issue, they do injections. I should have gotten a picture to show, but they have means of yes injecting these sprays and these are commercial orchards because that I guess that's the way that is most effective to
Like drill into the
Yeah.
bark?
right.
Put the antibiotic in the bites, like plastic bags, and they hang it in the tree, and they give the injection to the plant,
Right.
and slowly.
over
Okay.
time.
Takes
So they
time.
have
That's
these
the way.
Interesting.
Like an IV.
kind
Like
of,
ivy,
yeah,
like
it's,
ivy, yes.
it's interesting, but yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, which is why people try to do research to find other ways, because that is costly on a large scale. It is very expensive.
For a small farmer is no cost benefit good.
Sorry,
For a small farmers.
antibiotic. I don't think it's.
He has two, 3.
What,
Yeah.
2 or 3?
It's like-
Well,
Yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah.
not. Yeah, I'll probably just focus on the other ways. I mean, since it's integrated approach, we could try the other things, like just keeping it clean and sanitation and those other things. Because I don't think you'll be worth
That's
using
very important,
antibiotics.
the last session when you talk about trimming the trees, management the trees,
Mhm.
avoid all these issues.
Yes.
And then we should be connecting with that theory.
Yes, definitely. Yes, for sure. Okay, and there's another example. That's one called black knot caused by the fungus of Piosporina, and it just causes these black knots around your branch, and that will eventually affect yields and could cause tree decline over time. And then we also have plant pockets. I actually saw this one. Dr. Nadia, she has the Finca Eco Farm down over, and they called me because they had symptoms of curling on their Mexican and American plum. Very pretty, but not good for the tree owner. So this curling, this is the fruit. This is not showing the symptoms they had, but it will cause this curling of leaves and kind of galling. So it looks very similar to peach leaf curl, and these two could be mistaken because the leaf appearance for plant pockets might look like that, except this is caused by a different, actually, see, they're caused by the same genera, just a different species of Taphrina. And so there is a lot of plant pockets down the hill. I wish it was closer so we could see. And then cherry leaf spot is another example, also a fungi, but that's just causing leaf spots, again, affecting your photosynthetic efficiency because it's interfering with the amount of chlorophyll available on the leaf. And then Phytophthora, root rot, these are the modes, but see what it could happen, what it could do over time. The tree just declines because it's affecting the root system, and since the root is responsible for taking up water and nutrients, that is inhibited, and so then we just get a dead tree over time. So that's a pretty serious one as well. So for diseases, I guess one thing that's important to note is that usually the symptoms kind of give us an indication of what plant part might be affected. For example, if you got wilt, you know that the xylem vessels, if you've done biology, the xylem vessels are responsible for transporting water. So you then know that the pathogen must be affecting that part. In the case of the Phytophthora root rot, you get a tree decline, you'll be like, it's probably affecting the root system because the root is what should be taking in water, right? So sometimes the symptoms can be an indication, but we never make diagnosis based on symptoms because symptoms caused by disease could look like symptoms caused by nutrient deficiencies or herbicide or chemical applications. There's so many lookalikes that we have to do a lab diagnosis to make sure, and we want it to be accurate.
Yeah, in general, for fruit trees, if the trees decline, you can say immediately, sometimes 5 days, 7 days. The problem is the roots. If it took time, it's the xylem and the phloem, that's.
Is it connected with nematodes too? That case? Like, and that disease will connect with nematodes?
Or
No.
like for
No, that anything affect the roots,
It-
even sometimes
Right.
flooding, even flooding.
so nematodes, yes, nematodes
Yes.
do affect roots because they're soil-borne. A lot of nematode diseases will affect the roots, but in this case, the phytophthora are oomycete, these are molds, water molds. They're fungal-like organisms, but very important. Phytophthora will also cause serious diseases in tomatoes.
And if we notice any symptom of overgrowth of the roots, we don't buy that seedlings. That's a law. If it is over 5%, you have to burn the seedlings that for sale, burn them. Don't put them in the market at all. It's, international law. So we have to be careful about looking at our seedlings when we buy them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's very, I guess I'll keep, because I was going to say something on the planting stock, but maybe I'll say it when we get to that slide.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Thank you. And so we have looked at a few examples of diseases that affect the tree fruits that we know grow here in Missouri, at least the most important ones. But I guess I wanted to introduce you to two terms that are of importance, symptoms and signs. So when we're talking plant diseases, you might be asked, what symptoms did you observe or what signs did you observe? And so I wanted to differentiate those two terms. The symptom will refer to expressions of disease by a plant in response to the pathogen. So this is more like changes in the plant that you're seeing compared to a normal plant. Things such as a leaf spot or a blight or the scab on the fruit or stunting of your tree or a wilt or cankers or chlorosis, which is yellowing, necrosis is dying out, or rots. And then a sign will refer to evidence of the pathogen. It's either the pathogen itself or a pathogen product on the diseased plant or tissue. So things like spores. If you recall the picture I showed with the brown rot, the fruit had turned brown, so it was rotting. The symptom would be the rotting, but it was covered in spores of the pathogen causing it. So just the presence of those spores would be a sign of the disease. And for certain pathogens, especially the fungal pathogens, they produce fruiting bodies, and this is how they are able to survive over time. This is how they overwinter. So during the winter, they form these fruiting bodies that are able to withstand the harsh winter conditions. And then in the spring, if you don't clear your orchard and if you had disease, those guys just kind of get reactivated and then cause a new bout of disease, which is why sanitation is important before you establish at the beginning of the season. Try to clean out your field or your greenhouse, your high tunnel, just wherever it is you're growing the crops, because if you had any issues with disease the past year, it's likely you have some overwintering structures.
They invernate the soil, they invernate inside soil.
Oh yes, and some can survive for years. It's amazing. The fusariums will form, for example, chlamydospores, which can stay for many years in the soil. And so if you don't do anything, the populations build up, and so then it means you would keep the disease occurring over and over again.
And natural treatment for that.
So it depends on the pathogen. For the soil-borne pathogens, you will want to do, and some people fumigate their soils. I guess it depends on what practices you use on your farm. So fumigations are common to just, clean the soil, because that's where you have nematodes, and a lot of fungal pathogen structures will survive in the soil. But for some of these, they will survive on your crop debris. So if you're growing a crop, for example, and you just left your debris in the field, and there's any disease, then you're likely having some inoculum sources on those. So burning those out or cleaning them out is another way to get rid of.
Yeah, there is another way in Africa, because due to hot summer, they take off the plastic of the greenhouse and they flood, the soil with water and cover it with plastic. So the nematode, especially problems nematode, will escape down, and some of them die. The escape down, they will not come next fall. So you have to grow, tomato or cucumber. By the end of the season, next spring, they will show up. So you end your crops. That's one of the natural way, and it's not expensive way, and no any antifungal or antibiotic, no drugs or nothing, just water and high temperature.
Is there a way to identify those diseases when you make when you buy soy? Sometimes we buy soy, we don't know what we are buying. We
Right.
can bring that soil to. our
Definitely.
spots.
Oh, yes, yes.
How do you manage that situation?
Right, for sure. I mean, that's definitely one way that you could get diseases introduced into your orchard because, yeah, unless the soil is said to be sterilized, which I don't know, the soil producers state whether the soils are sterilized or not, maybe not. I guess we can't always tell. So with the soil, I mean, we can do a soil test. Usually, the soil tester will be testing things like the nutrients, but I know that now there are ways or methods that researchers are using to study soil microbiome. So you can study what pathogens or what microbes are present in your soil and determine whether those have potential of causing disease. I just don't think that would be feasible for farmers because I know it costs a lot to do those kind of tests. So I guess you just have to make sure you're getting your soil and starting material from a reputable source because if it is a reputable source, I think they will try to adhere by the guidelines and make sure it's sterilized to avoid the occurrence. And if they're selling plants, they might do virus testing for trees. Tree decline could also be caused by viral diseases, and that's very common in vegetable crops. I did work with sweet potatoes, for example, and grapes as well. And so there's what they call the National Clean Plant Network. And these guys try to ensure that growers are getting access to seed or planting material that's been tested for viruses. So then when they buy it, they know that it's good, it's clean. Sometimes the nurseries will not test that, but I think it's good to make sure, ask them if they do, because then, you're trying to do all these preventative things to prevent anything from occurring, which could cost you losses in future years.
I was wondering about like science in the agroecological approach
Mhm.
have been able to analyze if over time
Mhm.
with a natural treatment of the
Mhm.
agricultural practices like following soil conservation and
Right.
practices that enrich the quality of the
Ah,
soil.
right.
Those
Yes, yes.
those diseases or those viruses
Mhm.
may start disappearing over time.
Oh,
But
yes, yes.
my question really is to what extent
Mm.
the practices we normally do with conventional farming
Mm.
of using agrochemicals or pesticides have been a factor to increase those problems, considering that those
Right.
diseases, those viruses
Mhm.
grow resistant to those specific pesticides.
Right.
So how do you approach it?
For sure, that's a great question. Thank you. So, yes, I mean, there's definitely, if you did, I know that there's differences in disease incidence occurrence in the conventional, the different farming systems, mainly because of the practices used. And you're right that in conventional systems, for example, some of these guys actually develop resistance, and that's the case with some of these pathogens, which is why they have to identify other methods. But in the non-conventional or systems that might not rely on chemicals, I know that there's also work being done on building, in the case of soil-borne pathogens, disease suppressive soils. And so there's a lot of research on soil health because they say that certain practices seem to build populations of the good bacteria, or not only bacteria, but pathogens or microbes that might compete with the pathogens. So then that eventually affects the disease incidence and severity. So some will rely on things that kind of build a healthy soil. And I mean, there's some data which shows, I just don't know how, I mean, I guess effective. Right, right. But yes, I mean, there's definitely research that shows that could be used.
And with for trees, we can use, whenever available, resistant rootstocks. That's very important.
Right. Yes.
We'll give you following this.
Right, for sure. Thank you. No, that's all right. Thank you. And so bacterial ooze, I guess, was the other one. That's a telltale sign that you have bacteria. Just put whatever you suspect has a bacterial disease in clear water, cut, and you'll see the streaming. And then mildews, which you might also have seen on vegetables if you grow vegetables. Powdery mildew will be found on the upper side of your leaf, and downy mildew will be found on the underside of your leaf. And next slide, please. Thank you. And okay, so this is an activity, I guess, based on what we've learned so far. Symptom or sign. So we'll have a picture one at a time, and you will just tell symptom or sign. So here is a picture with leaf samples, and there's some white mycelia, that's fungal mycelia on the leaf. Probably typical powdery mildew. Would you say symptom or sign? Remember, symptom is changes in the pathogen appearance compared to the normal plant, whereas a sign will be the presence of the pathogen or its parts. And this is mycelia. Mycelia is part of the fungal. It's a fungal structure. So would you say that's a symptom or a sign?
It's a sign.
A sign, right? That is a sign. Next one, please. Thank you. And this is a tomato plant. The leaves yellowing, starting to curl. I'm not sure what's going on. Would you say a symptom or sign?
Symptom.
Symptom?
Yeah.
I would say a symptom because I don't see the pathogen or evidence of it, but there's lots of changes in the plant, such as the curling of the leaves, the color, the sclerosis as well. So that's a symptom of whatever it is that was causing. It might be a viral disease, or it could be a nutrient deficiency. There's many possibilities.
Some people may interpret that also as a sign because you
sign?
see a plant like
Mhm.
curvy and having this kind of curvy lips. It's a symptomatology of a specific disease.
Right.
And on the other hand, it's also a sign that you need to do something.
But,
Well,
but you cannot say one factor. because
right,
more than one
that's the
factor.
thing for sure. Yeah, it's a symptom of whatever it is. If it were the pathogen, we should at least see something like, rust spores, those are fungal spores, or like the actual pathogen were part of it, which we do not see here, and which is why I thought that would be a symptom. But I mean, it's open for let's thank you. Next one. How about that one? That's I think a citrus leaf with this leaf spots with a yellow halo around and some fluorescence
Yeah.
as well. Symptom, yes. Mhm. Sorry, next one, please. And here's a root. That's a root with serious galling. Nematodes will cause galling like that, I know, in some of the crops, like soybean, tomato, sweet potato. So it might be a nematode disease, which is a symptom or sign.
Symptom.
Symptom. I think the symptom. So to get the nematode, you'd have to cut open those gauze, and you will find a lot of them if it is a nematode disease. Next one, please.
You will need to have a microscope.
Well, yes, these are all microscopic, but yeah, you need to dissect, open it up. You won't just have, you have to get into the roots to see. Here's some wilt, some necrosis, another tomato, symptom or sign?
Symptom.
Symptom, right. Yes.
It needs some nitrogen.
I mean, right. Well, I mean, it could be, I guess, symptom just referring to, yes, it could also be a nutrient deficiency or something else, but if it is disease, a symptom in that we have the changes in the appearance and not the actual presence of the pathogen. And if it is disease, over time, these leaves might even, if it was fungal, for example, might get some spores forming, some, appearance on them that might suggest there's a pathogen. But in this case, I guess we'll say a symptom because we don't see evidence of that. Next picture, please. Oh, sorry. How about this one? Lots of rust. Lots of rust on the underside of a leaf. And rust, you actually see it. The plants are orange, like they just turn orange. And so that is a
Sign.
sign because those are the actual rust spores. Next picture, please. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, tomatoes. we have these tomatoes with an interesting looking appearance. Would you say symptom or sign for these?
What I've learned about that in my gardens is that the infection's in the soil.
Right.
So what I do when that tomato's growing, I'm pulling those leaves off,
Hmm.
close it. I don't want anything touching the soil.
Oh, yes, yes.
And I get a stem about that high and my leaves all go up about that.
Oh, nice.
Now it's gonna get these in well, you know, the rain will even splash that from the soil up.
Right,
That's
that-
where I get those leaves off.
Yes.
So I know how to control that.
Right.
And eventually it's, well, I have grown them right up to trees
Oh, nice.
without it, but
Mhm.
you know, if anything on that soil gets on that plant, it's
Right.
gonna wilt.
That is
But
true.
and we don't, you know, we grow for ourselves.
Yes.
And on peaches, for instance, we've got peaches and pears, you know, that's the fruit trees.
Right.
And where we have a problem with both, the main problems with peaches, right?
Mhm.
And
Oh,
it's
really?
kind of to me, what I'm seeing here, brown rot,
Brown rot?
Okay.
Yeah.
and it will,
Hmm.
and the thing of it is,
Mummified.
Yes,
All right.
it causes mummified
Yeah.
fruits. Yes.
now the peaches will mummify right on the tree, like she said.
Mhm.
But the ones you see that are just about ripe and we're not trying to pick them and let them ripen on the shelf. I'm trying to let them ripen on the tree,
Yes.
but that's a mistake. Because as soon as they get close to ripe, we've got brown rot.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And then it just progressively gets worse
Mhm.
until the season's over.
Right.
Is there any
right.
guidance here that
Right.
should we pick them before they get intentionally ripe?
So yes, brown rot, yes. Brown rot is really a big problem. So the first thing I would do is as soon as you notice some of the fruit before it gets to the mummified stage, try to get those out because those are the ones that are probably passing on the inoculum to the
And what you're
healthy
saying
ones.
is get them out and get them away.
Away from your orchard, as far away, because right, that's the source of
Don't let them fall
inoculum.
on the
Oh
ground.
no,
and
no,
spread.
no, they
Like
shouldn't fall to
burning
the
'em?
ground.
Would burning them help?
Right, just get rid of them. Yes, just
Now,
get
the
rid
fire,
of them.
smoke and everything, is that gonna,
Composting,
To be destroyed like
I mean, destroy, so that
Well,
because
composting is a way to
you're going to,
destroy.
No, they don't.
I don't think
I
I would use it in a
understand
compost.
that. Because when you compost, they will go up to a specific temperatures
Ah.
inside the fermentation process.
Some of them, Dr. Bazas, no, don't compost.
Right, I
So
would.
that is why the
Yeah,
Just,
some just
I'll
get
just get
compost.
rid of them, just
Yeah.
burn them, right, and see if that helps because the others are getting infected because there is a source of inoculum and it's likely the ones that you're observing that are rotting and getting mummified, and those are loaded with spores. If we get those, they have so many spores that they could infect, I mean, the rest in a very
how do you
short
control?
amount of
I mean,
time.
we try to go natural.
Yes.
You know, we don't wanna eat spray.
Right, of
But
some
is there any
sprays
way to prevent it?
to prevent.
It's natural and not dangerous.
Right. So preventing, I mean, so when we talk about preventative measures, will be the first we'll say is start out with resistant varieties. And I know that there are resources which will tell you how different cultivars might respond to different diseases. Some diseases will be more, we use the word susceptible, meaning that they easily get that disease, whereas others are classified as resistant and those will take a while to get affected even though there's inoculum. So I don't know what cultivar, it would be nice to know what cultivar you have.
What variety you have?
The variety.
Sorry.
What variety?
What variety?
What variety?
Sure, we know what variety we have.
Germans,
One is
Do
a,
you?
one is a clean stone and one is a freestone.
Flintstone and freestone.
But I
Okay,
don't know what.
Which one affected more?
That clean stone.
Clingstone. Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because there's difference between varieties.
Right. So okay, but then it's already established. I guess we have these trees and they're already there. Clearly, there's already a difference if one is getting affected more. So we'll probably just have to focus on things such as orchard sanitation for brown rot, that's a big one because the dropping, we want to prevent the fruit from dropping, prune any infected branches. And I would try to do sanitation. I mean, fungicides, chemical applications are the last resort if you need to, but I would start with sanitation and brogging the disease material.
When I see one starting to get sick,
Oh,
don't just
yeah.
let it sit there and
No,
mummify. Just
no, yes, and
get it out.
get it out, yes, as soon as you see it, yes, and let's see how that,
I
How
think
that
also if you have
Mhm.
any, if your neighbor have beaches, you can ask them what variety they have. If they they don't have a problem with their variety, you can cut this one and graft it with the other variety. For example, Red Haven, another good variety.
Mhm.
So look around with your
I
neighbor.
don't have any neighbors that I know
No,
of that have peach
we're
trees.
the only ones that do this.
Because
Okay.
here, I don't hear there is a problem with Red Haven. They are saying good things about
I think what I'm also hearing,
What
Yeah.
kind,
Red Haven.
what'd you say?
Red Haven,
Red heaven,
yes, it's a variety, well-known variety.
variety of peaches.
Yes, well-known variety.
I
Okay.
think what I'm also hearing
Mhm.
is keep them pruned low enough where we can reach the beds
right, and also
and
air,
get rid of.
right, and keep it aerated. So with most fungal diseases, they like the humid and the wet. And so if your trees are really bushy, that just provides a perfect environment for them. So we say try to aerate,
Oh,
prune to
trees.
kind of create a good canopy so that everything is not too close, because that's perfect for them. So I would work on sanitation and aerating to get that nice canopy that allows good airflow to prevent a disease from easily occurring.
Open the center of the center,
Right.
so good air circulation.
Right. and-
Obviously, we're neophytes at this, so we're both really listening. I mean, I'm hearing things that.
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
help.
I have 4 pear trees that are wonderful.
Right.
They're resistant to everything. They're
Great.
No problems with peach
The
trees.
peaches,
Yeah.
right? I
They
think
provide very good
peaches,
fruit.
peaches,
Yes.
and
About beaches this year, they have
Peaches
good
might be
fruit
more.
this year, beaches.
We get enough to set it, we have plenty to eat, but we lose half the crop.
There are other people, they told me they don't have beaches this year. They're all of it frozen.
Oh,
Mhm.
right.
Okay.
I know we have
You can
pears.
just look at this
So
one.
theirs different, theirs is the most resistant to cold, We have an apple.
I haven't
Yeah,
really looked, I had blossoms. I haven't looked to see if they put on any.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, so I guess we'll get to this part because we have lots of questions on this. So, okay, so what can we do to prevent diseases? And I have a few things listed here, some which may apply to the case of the brown rot. And so we'll start by recommending good cultural practices or good agricultural practices. The first one would be to select a good site for your orchard, a site that's well drained, that'll prevent water accumulation, because we know that the pathogens love water. And so we want something that will also encourage good airflow. Here's a picture just to show, good plant spacing and aeration, air passing in between the plants. We don't want the plants too close, too clustered.
What plant?
Well, I'm not sure what plant this is because I got this image from your website and they did not state, but I guess I was just trying to.
What is why in the bottom?
Why the white?
The bottom is white.
Oh, the border, the painting. I feel like, do you
For
think
sun.
it protects from?
Yeah, for protect from
Right,
sun.
I think it's more
That's protect from
protection.
sun.
I saw that in the
And
Hudson
sometimes
Valley.
if there is algae or something, prevent it from
Right.
growth there.
Because in Mexico, we used to do that when we use lime.
Yes,
Lime,
yes,
mhm.
yes.
Stuff like
Yeah,
that.
paint with lime,
And
yes,
that also help to balance the pH in the soil.
yeah.
Right, yes.
But
Mhm,
that's from the soil, not the trunk. This is the paint for the trunk.
mhm.
Usually they do it even for gardens, ornamental trees on the street. They paint it white to prevent it from sunburn. Yeah,
Mhm.
click the
Right.
right.
Yeah, I noticed that last year was the last year. I had the Hudson Valley in New York. They do lots of tree fruits, and several of the farmers they
Yes.
paint their trees as
Yes,
well for
yes.
the same reason. Mhm. And so once you have a good site, you also want to make sure you don't have alternate hosts. And this is important for rust diseases such as the cedar rust, which I had mentioned. There are not many diseases in alternate hosts, but the cedar apple rust is one good example that we could use this tool for. And then sanitation is the one I was referring to, because the fruit, the infected fruit in the tree or the mummified fruit are inoculum sources. And if we think back to the disease cycle, that would be our primary inoculum. And so then it's the one that's needed to begin that whole disease cycle. Without the primary inoculum, we won't have disease. Once we have it, and then we could go and we could have multiple cycles of the same occurring over and over. And so we want to get rid of those sources of inoculum as a very as a starting point. That would control. I think that would be a good start. And then pruning, another one, just to prevent, promote good aeration of your tree. Thinning, I guess these are management practices that might have been talked about in the previous session. And then also they say a healthy plant might be able to fight off diseases more. So promote good plant vigor by watering your plants, fertilizing them. I think stress plants for most plants have been shown to be more susceptible. And I think that applies to us too. Your immune system is compromised if you are not eating well and so on. So it applies to plants too. And then start with healthy planting stock. And I have here this logo, the National Clean Plant Network, and we actually have one for fruit trees. I need to check which fruit trees they provide virus tested material for, but I would recommend that if you're investing in orchard or tree production, because you're only going to start getting your fruit several years later, and it would be bad to have started with planting material that had a virus or something and only see the effects years later after all the investment, and you have to wipe it all out. So it's
they
always
have
as the necessary
They have the center of Springfield. They
It's
have
in
it.
Springfield.
Yes, it
Oh,
is.
Springfield?
Springfield, New York, Arizona, California. They are
Right.
the well-known centers.
Right. They have one for
disease,
sweet potatoes,
virus-free.
grapes, right. Mm-hmm. So anyway, next slide, please. And then,
Yeah,
oh yes.
what you're talking about, that you have to read them out. And again, I'm hard of hearing, so I might have missed things that
You know,
I'm gonna be. asked
she
to
talked
repeat, but
about clean.
Yeah, I used to travel. I traveled out in California,
Yeah.
the orchards out there, etc. And occasionally I would go by a major orchard, fruit orchard of some kind. And here'd be all the trees bulldozed up in piles, and they
Yes.
were burning.
Yes.
Burn
Is
them.
that when they're getting rid of disease or?
Some of
I
them,
mean, they completely remove.
if they have any symptom
Mhm.
of disease or nematode or nuts on the roots, mainly in the roots, they have to burn them. They don't have a choice. Otherwise, the field will get affected too, the orchard will get affected. So they got just get rid of them. So why some nurserymen, if they want to cheat, selling you things, which is they took them off before you come, clean, and you see just the clean ones, and they might be infected, but you don't see the symptom yet. When you plant it in your orchard, 2 or 3 years, the disease will show.
Yeah, because it's in the soil.
Yes,
I
yeah.
wondered, I mean, here they bulldoze it, but how'd they get it out of the soil?
Oh,
Like, you know, if they're gonna replant it, isn't it all, it's still there?
yes. Then,
The-
okay.
Yes, I think though, so if it's in the soil, I know we do several things, fumigation and soil solarization, which I
Yeah.
think Dr. Butcher will refer to.
Yeah.
The heat will kill the pathogens in the soil, so some will spread tar. I think usually black, right, which is a better absorbent,
Yeah.
trying to retain the heat and
Yes,
keep that for a certain period, and hopefully that heat kills all the pathogens in the soil for those who do not want to fumigate, because with the fumigants, you need chemicals, but this will also kill the pathogens and maybe the beneficials. So
Yes.
yeah, it just depends on what practices you would like to do on your farm. Mhm.
And what I'm seeing coming up now, we need to look for resistant varieties.
Yes.
Right, yes, this one is, we say, always start with resistance. It's a very good preventative strategy for any plant, any crop you have. As you think about what am I going to plant, ask yourself, well, what's it resistant to? What are the common diseases that might happen here and what's known about it? Because you might invest in something, even for vegetables, and it's so susceptible to many diseases that you cannot really do much with control. So getting grafts to resistant rootstock, which was referred to, and also resistant varieties, and there might be some resources on which ones are more resistant based on work research that has been done for the different crops. I would actually pass this. I printed this out. It's a helpful resource. Pass it over. It's not by me, but that's MU, but you can keep it because it's helpful, sure. Okay. Next slide, please. Sorry, Gabe. And then, so you do, if we did,
These papers,
Oh.
do they need them over here
oh, no,
too?
no, those are
No.
for you.
Oh.
Yes, because we're all, right, sorry. Yes. And then, for the people, there, I know that for for the commercial growers, they will also rely on decision support tools. And what these do, these are models that have been developed to predict the occurrence of a disease. So there are people who specialize in studying weather events. Then, for example, here it's been rainy in the past few days, it's humid, and they will say, well, the weather has been, so and so, we might expect this disease. So if you're someone who sprays chemicals, for example, this is time to put in your preventative fungicide for this disease. So then when the spores come, they won't get sick. And so that's why these decision support tools exist. They just forecast or tell when a disease is likely to occur so that you're prepared when it comes and it doesn't get you by surprise, in short. And then the last one, which is always the last resort and which should be used wisely and in combination with other methods, is applications of chemicals, because sometimes you've done all those other things and you just have to use a chemical that's labeled for that pathogen. Though if you're going to use chemicals, we recommend that these are preventative, so done as a preventative measure and targeted rather than used indiscriminately, because then that's not good on the environment. And so for a lot of chemicals, we ask the growers to rely on the decision support tools, because if it's been predicted that a certain disease will occur, then they will know when to apply, and they have these targeted applications rather than just spraying and spraying and spraying too many applications. So it reduces significantly the amount of applications. But we always say read the labels, because the label is the law for any chemical. So that's our last resort after you've tried all the other things. Next slide, please. And so during the season, we also recommend monitoring. As soon as you have your plants out in the field, or in the case of the orchard, once you get in the flowering and the bloom, we encourage you to scout regularly, just so that the disease doesn't catch you by surprise. When the symptoms start to show, it means that the pathogen's been around a while. But then if you've been actively looking, you'll probably catch it before it gets bad, so that you can take whatever is infected out before it causes more damage to other trees. So scout regularly. Why? Because it's going to help you detect problems early. When should you scout? We say early in the morning is a good time, and as often as you can. I know it's a lot of work, but it's a very good practice. And where should you scout? It depends on the crop. I guess at the base of the plant canopy for most crop plants. What would you advise for tree? For fruit trees.
For trees, we look for the cluster of fruits
The
and the
cluster and
leaves.
fruits, right?
Top. We don't look
The upper canopy, right? This would be for like.
But this one, what you are talking about, maybe for tomato or
Right,
cucumber.
this would be for the
Yes.
vegetables.
Yeah.
For the tree fruit, you'd be looking at the upper
Yes.
canopy, right? And then when scouting, we recommend, if you can, a notebook and a camera, because it's nice to take pictures of anything you see, and it would be nice to get the pictures. For example, the fruit that you saw with the symptoms, and we can tell for sure what it might be. And then
Pictures with 1,000 words.
it is, yes, it is for sure. And then a hand lens, I know some companies sell a hand lens, some that even go to a higher magnification. And so in the case of brown rot, we have spores. And so you can, or for insect pests, you can carry your magnifying glass and you're like, oh, I saw this. You know, it kind of helps to ID right there. And we can also come and look at those. And then pruners, just in case you find anything, to immediately take it out. And then plastic bags, in case you find something and you're not sure what that might be, you can get a Ziploc bag with just a moist paper towel and bag it. And MU has a plant diagnostic clinic and they will diagnose any disease. Or you can call me and I can do that because I'm working with him and he's happy to look at the samples for us. So just give a call and I can take samples as well if you'd like so we can confirm what that is.
Maybe you mean in Colombia?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. I have the website, I think, on the next
oh,
slide.
okay.
Mhm.
There was that screen you just went off at the base of the plant canopy. Are you saying that's where we should look for it
For vegetables,
to
for
start and it spreads up?
Vegetables.
in the yeah, I guess that's what
Well,
what
okay,
we
this
first.
is what I-
Right. Sorry.
I wondered if that.
That'd be
applied to what
upper.
you're saying with the fruit.
No,
Right. Oh
vegetables.
gosh.
Like the peach tree.
Yes, yes. This is a peach tree. It looks like plum pockets or something. It's hard to tell. Either the peach leaf curl or the plum pockets will cause symptoms. They're both a tafrina, but that's a fungus species. Yes.
Sometimes it's insects.
Okay.
Same
Mhm.
sometimes.
So we did all these things to prevent disease from occurring, but we still get something going on. And you're like, oh gosh, what's wrong with my plant? And there's all those possibilities he's trying to figure out. And you just cannot tell because there's all those possibilities you saw. The fungi, is it bacteria? Is it an insect? Is it a virus? Is it deficiency? You just cannot tell right there and then. And so our next step, if you do get something, as with the fruit, is diagnosis. We need to figure out what is causing the fruits to look like this. So what is causing this disease? And we want to know how it spreads so that we prevent the next plant from getting infected. We also want to know whether there's anything we can do from the pathogen spreading and also minimize damage caused, which was what you had asked. And so the next slide, please. For diagnosis, we will ask you to get, or if any of us did come to visit a site that has diseased trees or fruit, we will try to get as much as information, such as what are the symptoms on the fruit or the trees? Are there any signs? What is the host plant? What is the variety? How long have you had it? What have your practices been? Because all those things are very, very important for us to know to make an accurate diagnosis. And also, what has the weather been like? Yes, sir.
On the vegetables,
Yeah,
okay. As those plants start
yes.
and I'm pinching off the leaves like the tomatoes, et cetera, I'm trying to keep soil, you know,
Mhm.
and you couldn't do this on a broad scale. We do it because of what we did. Newspapers go down or cardboard.
Yes.
And then straw goes on top of that to make sure that the paper and cardboard doesn't blow away.
Right.
That keeps the water from splashing soil diseases up on our vegetable plants.
Mhm.
But what we've got trouble is with our fruit trees.
And the fruit
I mean,
trees.
that's, we haven't figured out
Right.
how to slow down yet.
Right. And this is the brown rot, right? On the fruit
Yeah,
trees.
basically,
Right.
that's what I'm seeing
Right.
anyway.
Right.
Because it's like a brown spot on there and then it
Yes.
just rots that plant.
Right. It would be
Or the
nice to
fruit.
have a
Fruit.
look.
You know, because, you know, for example, for grapes, some of the fungi will leave the hypha, the mycelium, on the canes. And winter on the canes. In spring, after bud break, they will attack the new growth. So this, you know, the fungus,
There's no getting
Okay.
rid of
it
it.
has, but we have that one, we have to spray it during dormancy, spraying it and paint
While
it.
it's dormant.
And
Mhm,
add some
mhm,
mineral oil
mhm.
to it, you know,
Mhm.
just to get rid of that.
Right.
Dr. Abusare, he started here at Lincoln University in Extension
Mhm.
Well, I pull all the,
program last year. Because he is looking for clients like you guys.
I collect all the garden refuse and it goes in a burn pile and I burn it every fall.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like
The
you-
blackberries, the bearing canes, I pruned them out. I
Mhm.
take them out, and of course, then the new canes are gonna bear fruit, but I try to get rid of everything,
Right.
you know, that I think could be diseased, but I haven't figured out how
The
to do
brown
it with
rot.
trees.
I think it's better, Mr. If I can get some information from you about your email and phone number, I will try to help you. I will try. I will,
appreciate
I,
that
I will,
very
I will
much.
visit your farm.
Mhm.
Oh, it's just a house.
Yes,
Just a yard.
no problem. It's, I even want to,
Very small.
because, yeah, because this is our job, to
Mhm.
do it, you know, free of charge, you know,
Mhm.
and see what the,
And-
I want to try to expand what we're doing.
yeah,
And she
yeah,
Yeah.
is
okay.
Mhm.
We can talk about it.
harassing what we
We
got.
can talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
are you living here, near Columbia or Jefferson?
That's just
Jefferson
like,
City.
Oh, Jefferson,
Okay.
okay. I'm here in Jefferson, so,
Right.
so no problem.
thank you.
We will get
I
this.
also have trouble with, that mildew.
The pow-
Yes.
the
The first,
powdery.
the one with the leaf with the white
Yes.
stuff
Oh,
on it.
yes,
Yes.
My
powdery
zinnias,
mildew.
I grow beautiful zinnias every year.
Yes.
Every
yes.
fall, I don't care
Right.
what you do, it's just a natural part of aging. It's gonna get it
Right.
and it's gonna kill them.
Oh, yes.
I bought it last year with some kind of spray stuff to put on it.
Yes.
I
yes.
tried to fight it, it really didn't,
Oh, right,
it
yes.
really didn't help.
That's a very common one too, the mildews. It's very.
I guess I should put that spray on preventatively before. it
Exactly,
gets in.
which is why we recommend preventative action.
Yeah.
It helps so much more than
There's
if
some
you try
people
to do
don't get it, I
something when you.
don't know why, mine always
Mhm.
get.
Oh, it might be the variety. I feel
Yeah.
like there's all those. That's why we want to ask all these
Yeah.
questions because
I
it might
raised
be
vegetables and I'll shut up
right.
there.
Or
But
what other
she-
crops
her
are.
house
on-
looks
mhm.
like a botanical garden. Sure, she's really
Mhm.
good at what,
Yeah.
you know, at the flowers.
Oh, nice. Wow. Well, thank you. Right. So yeah, diagnosis. I guess the importance of diagnosis is just so that we try to figure out what the pathogen is because we cannot effectively manage it if we do not know what it is. And so this is I guess I put this link here, but the NU Plant Diagnostic Clinic are who will receive any sample from any plant and they will figure out what it is and they will do an accurate diagnosis because they will not only look at your sample, they will also run lab tests, molecular tests to get the exact pathogen name as well as a species. And I can try to do some of that here with what I have. So I can take samples as well. And then for whatever resources we don't have, I can send to
What is
MU.
the fees for
I
that?
think they do 10 a sample, but he told me I was there last week because I took a few samples. So if I take the samples, he didn't charge me. So I can get the samples because I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with your fruit. He's looking at some grapes and the plum pockets. We're trying to figure that out. But I think for the public, it's $10 per sample. Yes. Mhm. Next slide, please. So, true or false? Can we accurately tell what a disease is based on the symptoms? We just went into the field and saw a plant, and you're like, I think it's that. I should spray. It might be so many things. I would avoid that. I've heard of cases where people ended up losing their crop because they sprayed, the wrong chemical for just something that wasn't even related. So,
One time you sprayed something on my fruit trees
oh,
because we wanted to try to prevent that mummified,
yes.
whatever.
Mhm.
And the drift went over to my pear trees.
Oh,
and
no.
And it shut them down.
Oh, no. Oh,
Yeah,
dear.
there's-
So we didn't do
It was
that.
just- So we didn't have a harvest of pears. I thought it might have killed my trees. No, they came
I
back
did.
and they're
Oh.
still,
I
they're
went
like,
to- I went to MFA and I sprayed what they recommended on the peach trees. But
Oh.
the red drift took it over to the pear trees.
they started getting
Which were
spots on the
about
leaves.
20,
Oh,
30
goodness.
It was not to spray it on windy days, you know.
Yeah.
Supposed to
Right.
be sunny, nice,
Mm.
no rainy days, no rainy windy days, no.
Mm.
Don't,
Oh,
Well, I didn't,
Don't
it
touch it.
wasn't, the wind really wasn't blowing. I
Yeah.
waited. I know
Mhm.
not to
Yeah.
spray in the wind.
if, just in case, for precaution, we have, to have, very wide plastic and separate this tree from the other tree, next tree.
Yeah.
over
For
the
the
height.
shower curtain.
Yes, over the height of the tree.
Yeah.
So that
What I was trying to do
Yeah.
was eliminate the brown rock on the
Yeah.
beaches,
Yes, yes.
and I shut the pear trees.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
At least it didn't kill them.
right. It's good they came back.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I've got
So, right.
scars from what she did to me.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, I guess we shouldn't try that first. Okay, so I think it might be, it might be the last slide, next slide. So these are just general approaches, which I just wanted to have to share. So when we talk about managing plant diseases, we have methods that we classify as exclusion. You're basically trying to keep the pathogen away from your crop production area, and that's why we recommend start with good planting material. You know the source, you know it was tested for viruses or whatever disease, and it's good. Because if it's not, you might be bringing in the pathogen from where your planting material came from. It's hard to tell. Also, eradication. Suppose you already, well, it so happens the pathogen gets introduced. In your case, you have the brown rot in your orchard. Rogging, which is what we're recommending right now, to just take out whatever is diseased and get rid of it. And then this is, you know, a last resort. Some will fumigate their soils because they're like, well, what if it's surviving in my soil? And then some will use therapies. I don't think these are effective on a large scale. Hot water or chemotherapy have been proposed by certain researchers to destroy your pathogen, but I don't think they're commonly used.
They use it for nematode.
Right, yeah,
What's
just,
with hot water? I mean, when you
Hot
talk
water.
about chemotherapy, I don't wanna do that again.
right.
But what's with hot water?
But what
Just,
she's
the
talking about
heat,
is
just hot water. I guess the actual heat,
very small
boiling
scale,
water.
very small scale.
On a small scale, I
Very small
mean,
scale.
right.
You say chemotherapy,
It killed
you mean
pathogens
chemicals?
in the
Chemicals,
soil.
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
They use it for
chemicals,
nematode.
yeah.
But why they use the same concept in human?
Oh,
We
like
treat
for
cancer,
cancers.
you treat cancer.
Oh, no.
No, no, no,
that one.
different.
No, it's
Different.
different.
No, this is
Yeah, it's
chemical.
different in
Yeah,
plants.
but the same.
Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah, generally same terminologies, it's
Right.
chemical.
And then we've also looked at practices like selecting a good site, good practices, host resistance, which again will avoid your pathogen or hinder pathogen disease development. And then protection, if you're going to resort to that, but using anything that will protect your host plant from pathogen infection or disease development. And finally, I think oops, okay, I think we skipped to the last one. These were case studies, but maybe on the brown rot, because these were just case studies looking at a few of the very important ones. And since you brought in brown rot, I had it as one of the case studies to look at. Brown rot caused by two different species of fungi in the genus Monolinia. And the case study was that it will occur when the weather has been warm and wet. So you might begin to see it because it's been pretty wet, and it's going to affect your stone fruit, the peaches, you know, the plums, and it will look like that. So there's a healthy one, but look at that. So as soon as you see that, this is even too late. You shouldn't let it get to that stage because that's already so many spores which could infect the healthy one. So you want to, I'll probably get rid of this whole branch right there, even though there's that one healthy one, just because you might have spores around to eat. I mean, yes, it's still healthy, but you don't want to keep it in the orchard because you just don't know. It might not be a long while and you begin to see the same symptoms. They're pretty close. Right. And so anyway, this was just a case study, but I think we've gone over the options. Host resistance, it's good to know how resistant your cultivars are. And sanitation is really the big one. Just keep your orchard clean of all these things and prune to ensure good airflow between the trees. And last resort, chemicals. But again, we encourage a use integrated management. So use a combination of all these methods. Start off with resistant plants, keep your orchard clean, healthy plants, fertilize, irrigate, and do all these things, and likely you'll prevent the disease from occurring. Next slide. And so in summary, today, I hope, I guess the take home is that to manage your disease successfully, whether it's on tree fruit or any other plant, You want to know the enemy. The enemy here is a pathogen. Know the enemy, otherwise you will not know what to do, which is why accurate diagnosis and ID are important. And then understand the disease triangle. What's the host? What's the pathogen? What's the environment? So that we know what variables are needed for disease to occur. And the disease cycle, is this a monocyclic? So is it a disease that will only have one cycle in the growing season, or one that could keep recurring? I think brown rot could have many cycles in the growing season because there's so much inoculum. And then detect early. That's why scouting is important, because as soon as you see the slightest symptom, just take it out. If you wait too late, that will make a difference with regards to the losses incurred later. And use a combination of methods. We call it integrated disease management. So you don't rely on one, because that could, in the case of chemicals, for example, resistant populations or non-effectiveness for just certain methods. So use a combination. And I think that was the last slide I had. If any questions, that's my email and phone, and I'm happy to come look at samples you have so we can test. Feel free to reach out. And thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.